here with Emilio de la Cruz at Chacewater in Kelseyville, California. And I am very excited today to be interviewing him with some Q&A about the growing of olive trees and their production here at Chacewater Winery and Olive Mill. I have a couple of questions for you. I wanted to know a little bit about Chacewater, the olive farm that you have here, and how you got into it.
Well, this started all back in 2002. The original owners was a Greek Orthodox monastery. I was one of the monks there, and this property, it's a 10-acre property, was donated to them as a business to grow the olives and then help them with financial, work the land, and then you produce whatever you make, you sell it, and you keep the profits. And so it was a nice donation to the monastery. It grew. The olive trees here are there's about 3,000 olive trees, 8 varietals, mostly Italian varietals and 2 Greek varietals. They were planted as 18-inch whips, but as you can see behind me, they're like 12, 13 feet tall now. This is their 11th year in the ground, but it started to grow. The olive mill opened up in 2004 to the public, and all of a sudden it started to get big. People were into olive oil. People had olive trees that were planted in their front yard, in their wineries, in their vineyards. So it was a kind of like they were saying, what do we do with the fruit? So they started bringing it over to be processed. I started off milling about 25 tons of oil or olives in the first year. The next year it was 50 tons. The next year it was 75 tons, and I went all the way up to over 100 tons by myself milling. And that's up to 2008. And that's when it got way too much for the monastery, and they decided to sell the property, and Chacewater came along. Paul Manuel, the owner, bought the place from the monastery. Well, they wanted to build a winery, and so that was his goal, is to have a mill and the winery. He didn't want to get rid of the mill, so that's how I stayed on as their... I didn't have any formal training of making olive oil. I just kind of jumped into it. I do have mechanical skills. I was a mechanic in the U.S. Army, so I kind of know what's going on with mechanical stuff, so that fits right in with the machinery. It's all machines and all that stuff. And then farming, I never did any farming. I just jumped into it, learned it, went to some classes, read books, and visited other mills. And pretty much that's how I did it, just on the job training and just experiencing it, making mistakes. And then just started really honing in on what it takes to make olive oil and making it, not just pushing buttons, but there are different things that you have to do to take care of the fruit. So that's how I got started in the olive oil business.
So what are some of the varieties that you grow here on your land?
Right here on this 10-acre property, there's the standard Italian varietals, which are Frantoio, Lucchino, Merino, Pendolino. And so right in the back, the other half of this orchard, that's where the Italian varietals.
Emilio, what are your olive trees self-pollinated, and are olive trees in general self-pollinated?
Yes, for the most part. All olive trees are self-pollinating. There are a few that are not, but usually what happens with olive trees is they're self-pollinating, but you still get a pollinator. A pollinator usually is a tree that produces a ton of flowers. What that does is increases the pollen count. So your normal fruiting tree might not be heavy on flowering, but then if you have a pollinator next to it or around it, that increases your chances of getting those fruit to mature into a fruit. For the most part, as long as you have, I would say, 6 to 12 trees in an area where they're going to do some pollinating, it'll self-pollinate.
I know you produce here organic and extra virgin olive oil of the highest quality, and all the different olive oils that you produce. And I'm a member of your mixed club, which is olive oil and wine, and I'm just mad for the olive oils, of course the wine too, but the olive oil makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Well, just explain to me just a little about extra virgin organic olive oil. What is that?
In California, we as a producer, if we want to put extra virgin on our label, which is the highest quality, because there's 3 different tiers of qualities of olive oil. You have extra virgin, you have like 100% or pure olive oil, and then there's pumice oil or lamp oil. So the highest one, which is extra virgin olive oil, is the same thing as the first cold press that you see on labels.
Okay.
So that means it was extracted without any heat. It's the first time the olive oil was put in through the hydraulic press and there was no heat. Whatever oil comes out, that's your extra virgin olive oil. And we use that through a centrifuge, which extracts 100% of the olive oil from that first pressing. You have residual oil in that first press that's still in there, so they have to heat treat that with up to about 150 degrees of heat to release a lot more of the oils that's trapped in that paste. And that becomes like your virgin olive oil. And then in California, we have to have a lab test which does peroxide value, UV absorption, and the free fatty acids. Those 3 tests in a lab will show you if your olive oil will be extra virgin olive oil.
What would you say are some of the top benefits of using olive oil in your diet?
I would say the top benefits would be the fact that it has a lot of antioxidants, polyphenols, and these nutrients. The olive oil doesn't get clogged up in your system as do animal fats. So it's a healthier oil overall with all of the,
Your skin looks nice.
So
is that part of it?
I would say...
And your hair looks good.
I could say that it is, because if you're working as a mill master or operating mill, when you're crushing the olives, there's a fine mist of olive oil.
You've told me some of the different varieties here, and we've discussed some of your favorites. And one of your favorites that you grow is the Toscano.
Yes.
It's the Tuscan. And what would you say makes that different from some of the other varietals that you grow?
The difference between the Tuscan varietal, which everyone really likes, that's one of my favorites, is that it's a blend of 4 different Italian varietals. So it's the Frantoio, Licino, Merino, and Pendolino. It's all a field blend, so everything's planted back there in different percentages. As soon as we harvest everything, it's all blended together. And what makes it different is it has a balance. It's right in the middle of the soft oils and then the really strong, robust oils.
Of all the olive oils that you produce, is that your most popular one that you sell the most of? What would you say your top 2 of those that you produce? And also, do you mind just letting me know again what are the different varieties that you produce here?
Sure. It's the out of all of our oils, there's 6 different varietals. Tuscan is one of our most popular. The one that everyone really goes for is the Sevillano, but that's where everyone starts. It's a soft oil. It's a Spanish oil. It's buttery. It's a soft oil. It's very delicate oil. If you have air popcorn, you could drizzle it on top. But that's pretty much our #1 seller, and then the Tuscan's next, and then our flavored oils, the blood orange and Meyer lemon. But the varietals that we grow here are the Allegra, Fabulosa, which are the 2 newer, they're newer developed varietals in the last 30 years. They're not your standard Italian varietals. They're a blend of different other Italian varietals that are put into one tree. Frantoio, Licino, Merino.
Can we back up there? That really caught my ear. When you said that there are a few different varietals blend into one tree, do you mean to say that one olive tree has different arms that are growing different varietals on it?
No, it's not grafted.
Okay.
It's a varietal that they develop but different parts of unknown olive varietals from Italy. So it was a hybrid. So what happens is they pretty much keep putting together these different varietals until it has its own character, and then they developed it to produce olive oil. So it has a higher percentage of olive oil content.
In terms of pruning your olive trees, in terms of also as that relates to harvest and fruit production, so that you're getting the best quality olives out of your trees, what do you what do you do to prune your olive trees here, and what are your pruning objectives here
Okay.
at Chacewater?
So when we first started these trees, they were planted as a monocone style tree, which means a central leader, and you train that central leader to go by itself, and then you let the little pieces branch out, just like a Christmas tree. The way I perceive the trees as it grows, you want to keep it open so that you're not, you have to let the sunlight in for photosynthesis. You got to let all that. If it's too vigorous and you're not letting any of the sun come into there, it's just gonna struggle to produce the right amount of fruit. And we do that every other year or as needed. Every tree grows different. You just kind of systematically go do it.
What months might you be doing that in?
I would say right after right before spring, before the trees start to really wake up and start producing the flowers. You could do a small amount of pruning, and then after the fruit has developed into a real fruit, after the flowering stage, and then it hardens off into a real fruit, then you could prune a little bit. But anytime between, like when it's flowering and turning into a fruit, you don't want to touch the trees because there's pollen everywhere, and then you don't know which area you're gonna reduce your crop.
Will you do thinning this summer once you have prolific fruit on your olive trees? Will you end up going through and with others going ahead and just thinning?
We've never had to thin our orchard, only because our soil structure here is not the type that's so full of nutrients that the trees take off on us.
Tell me a little bit about some issues that you might deal with here, because we've been over pruning. A little bit about pest and disease. Do you have issues with olive knot, olive scales, anything like that? And what typical issues do you have to think of?
Here in Lake County, it's a drier climate than the coastal, like the Bay Area or Sonoma, or all of the areas where there's the ocean and the fog. We don't have any problems with the scale or the knots here. But we do have one thing that we do worry about, is the olive fruit fly, which everyone has to worry about. And that's one of the things that last year in 2013 was a pretty, the olive fruit fly just took over Napa, Sonoma. Every county they were reporting that olive fruit fly was up, and it was destroying a lot of fruit. What happens is the olive fruit fly, it injects, or it penetrates the fruit after it's developed. This is usually in June, July, August. They're looking to lay their eggs. So they're going to go and put eggs in the fruit, and what the egg does is it develops and it turns into a larva, and it swims around in the fruit, kind of tunneling. So it's creating holes and pockets, and then what happens is that the fruit is destroyed. Our orchard was affected, just not as much, but I could see there was something.
I know we're in March right now, and it feels like such a spring day, but in December, you were hit with a really heavy-duty frost here in Kelseyville, California, and California was hit by a bad frost. So how did that affect the olive farm here?
It didn't show right away, but the first week of December we had temperatures of 12 degrees, everything in the teens, for close to a week, maybe a week and a half. So the orchard here, the floor was really cold. But you don't notice it around me, but if in the back orchard where the younger trees are, the trees look yellow and then they lost their leaves. Trees back there are going to have to either be transplanted, pruned back, and then kind of restart. But we did have a lot of diebacks. One of the other varietals of Fabulosa actually is not as cold tolerant than the Allegra we're standing here. Every year I would get the freeze, and it would crack the branches open. So that's always struggled here. So I could imagine this year, since we had that freeze, it's probably gonna have to restart again.